this is really exciting because I feel like now I just accidented into the top longevity thing, right? I'm good at teaching people how to exercise, and now exercise is being identified, just as you said, as probably the number one correlative to longevity that we know about in the research today. Not to say that couldn't change, but that's just saying so. It's much more powerful. In fact, it's more provable than nutrition right now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rethink Aging podcast. And I'm so delighted today to have James Goodlatte, a certified professional trainer, here with me and a longevity coach right up my alley. Welcome, James. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to talk about the things I love and talk about all the time. So here we go.
Super. Well, I'm going to give our listeners just a little bit about your background, your bio here, and then we'll dive in. So you graduated with a kinesiology degree in 1999. Good year. And you also have numerous advanced qualifications, including a postural, as I sit up straight,
Hmm.
postural alignment specialist, integrated flexibility specialist, a holistic lifestyle coach, and many more. In the early 2000s, you were awarded Trainer of the Year and Master Instructor, and you became an educator to fitness professionals all around the world. You are the founder of Fit for Freedom. That's at www.exerciseforlongevity.life. And you provide exercise and longevity coaching conveniently for anyone in their home and also very affordable online. And you work with people in many different time zones. And you also are the education director at Fit for Birth. This company has provided continuing education for thousands of professionals in 52 countries. And now, importantly, you are my core muscle trainer. So I'm delighted to have you here. I wanted to just share with our community listeners about the difference that this work has made for me in my fitness. And just, I know a lot about breathing. I've been doing diaphragmatic breathing for a long time, but you have taught me many things, many nuances that I feel are really vital to my health. So I wanted to share that with everyone. James, take us back to the beginning of your career, or maybe early in life. What sparked your passion for movement, and what has led you down this longevity path?
Yeah, so thank you. That was awesome to hear my story through your through you. The when I was in 8th grade, I liked a girl, and I was like, well, I should probably get muscles to, that's what I was thinking. And this was, right after like the Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of like boom
Oh
and pudding
boy.
stuff. So I ordered a scientific journal on fitness, though, it 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 talked a lot about the science of exercise and nutrition in a lot of ways. And so and it was
In
literally
eighth
like a
grade?
yeah. But it wasn't the journals like we had. It was like 200 pages of like, this study said this study said this study said this, like someone had put that together. And so after I had read all of that, it was like I entered high school and was already like, I knew a lot more than the average, kid in high school. And so people just started asking me, they're like watching what I was doing in the gym and stuff. And so really, I say now that my training career almost started in high school unofficially, because people were just asking me, hey, what can I do, and how do I do this and that. And at some point, I was, like they labeled me Carrot Boy, because I also ate very differently. And I didn't feel bad about that. I felt good about it. I was proud
Good
about
for
it.
you.
I was doing health and nutrition so early. And then I suppose I'll just throw in one other thing. If the question is how I got to where I am, is that I remember my grandmother being in a wheelchair,
Mm,
and how debilitating and incapable she was without
yeah.
others. And I went through college for the first couple years, and I didn't know what I was gonna major in. And you have to pick by the third year, right? So I went through the first 2 years without picking, and my guidance counselor was like, "Well, James, you have to pick something, like what's important to you." And I remember saying to her, "I just don't want to be in a wheelchair later on." And so she said, "Well, okay, you sound like a kinesiology major. Go there." And it turned out
I
to
love
be
it.
yeah, it turned out to be an unbelievable fit. Unbelievable. I remember taking anatomy and physiology classes with hundreds of students in the, University of Maryland is where I was. And it was a good kinesiology school, like good meaning like a lot of research was coming out of there. It was actually one of the premier schools actually for this. And I remember being such a stickler for every single question. I was getting over 100% on all of the tests and things. One day, I didn't get 110%, which I should have. I had 108. So I made an appointment to go to the teacher's office to ask her because I wanted to understand why was that not right? What did I miss about that? And when I walked in, she said, "So you're the guy who's beating all of my postgrads across the board." And I was
Well,
an
that's
undergrad, of course, at the
awesome,
time.
James.
Yeah, so it was a super good
I
fit,
love it.
So and then, I guess from there, it's still I graduated, but I still thought I was like, well, training isn't a real career. That's what I thought. And it really kind of wasn't. It wasn't technically in the Bureau of Labor Statistics even until like 2005 or something like that. And here I was graduating in 99. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just go back and live with my parents until I figure out I'll apply for some jobs. I don't know. I'll go probably be a government worker. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I got a call by a teaching assistant who knew me from school and was like, "Hey, we need a trainer in DC." And I was like, "Well, what am I going to do? Turn down this job?" I said, you know what I said? I said, "I'll take it until I find a real job." so, so I quit, and then that was
Hmm.
kind of it from there. Became a trainer in DC, and it was just I was like, "Oh my gosh, people want to hire me for my knowledge in this. This is amazing." And that was it from there. And then when trainer of the year, this was not a worldwide thing. This was for my particular company, which was a nationwide wide company at the time or whatever for my location. So it was just really nice that obviously I was the next person to be, a master instructor means that I'm training the other trainers. And that's where I honed
Mhm.
my sort of skills of teaching and trying to really simplify and also make things kind of exciting. Like
Yeah.
nobody wants to like sit in class. I remember what it was to have bad teachers as well as good teachers. And I was like,
Sure.
I'd rather be a good teacher. So how do I figure out how to make this a little more exciting?
Well, I love that you found your passion so early in life and it just, walked itself out. That's lovely. You've been a trainer for 25 years? Oh, a almost the same amount of time I've been a doctor. How have things evolved with the work that you're doing? And how did you land on, like, core and stability and longevity coaching?
Well, really, it's about finding the answer under the answer. Everything in today's age is so like superficial, and like the classic. Let's take a medicine, but you're not actually solving the underlying reason as to why the medicine is needed, right? That's often the case. So as I was trying to figure out, like another thing I told my guidance counselor was something like, I'd rather learn about how to use my body before I would ever learn how to, for example, fix a car. I wanted to fix my body. I wanted to know about that, and so as I continued to try to find solutions for people who are in pain, people who are a lot of times people come into fitness and they just are my knee hurts, my back hurts, my shoulder hurts, everything hurts, but I'm just going to lift weights. That's how it was back then. So if part of the question is about the evolution in the last 25 years, we've gone from people not knowing anything about organic foods to now organic is like a regular term. We've gone from
Mm.
people just lifting weights, which, like fitness is like, I'm going to push harder with whatever body, physique, muscle alignment, and muscle balance that I have. And today, we now do a lot more corrective exercise, which is, well,
Mhm.
let's make sure we turn on the right muscles and then we'll push you in fitness. It's almost like I think everyone should go through 3 months of corrective exercise training, reprogramming, so that you can then go to fitness and not have it be something that wears your knee out in 20 years, because that's what's happening if you're not using the right muscles, right? So, long ago, it was really when I first like, I guess I'll say one more thing about it is that breathing was a course that I decided I would start teaching But I was like, where do I get information from? This was before there was even internet on this level. I was trying to order books and figure out what did they say over in the East about breathing, and how does it relate to, was there, and I was trying to just figure it out. And I created, coursework about it and started to teach the other trainers as part of what I was doing. I was very blessed to be in environments that allowed me to kind of try to teach things that were off the normal, the usual. It wasn't just about biceps. Do this with
Sure.
your arm,
You were a
and so
pioneer.
yeah, I mean, for better and for worse. There's pros and cons to everything, but yes, I've
Mhm.
always been a pioneer in that way, and so that's where I really started to learn about it, and now it is much more common. Like, it's much more common. Back in the, like, I would say that one of the company, the Fit for Birth, is an education company for trainers, and one of the things that we're most well known for is teaching core breathing, teaching people how, in just oftentimes what happens in the very first session, the very first assessment, is this core breathing gets such a change that people say things like, oh, I don't have the back pain that I literally just had 5 minutes ago or whatever, right? And so to get a change like that, or to be more stable, to feel stronger immediately when you access your breathing, that's really powerful stuff. And that was a lot of trial and error and accident and stuff like that along the way. And now it's becoming much more regularly, like, performed. Like now it would be rare for a trainer to come through our courses and not already know breathing's important. Let's put it that way. When we first started, it was like mind blowing. People were like, "Whoa, I never thought about breathing actually being important." I'm like, it's actually what it's that, there's only two muscles that if they don't work in your body, you will die within 5 minutes. One of them is your heart, the other one is your diaphragm, your primary breathing muscle. And
Oh,
so
okay,
when the
yeah.
diaphragm doesn't, work, when it doesn't do its full job, your brain will literally start going through a series of events to be like, oh my gosh, I'm at risk. I need to start changing things. I need to tighten up areas. I need to flex other things. I need to basically change your posture and everything up and down your kinetic chain to make sure that I survive just to breathe.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
What a
remarkable.
good
So
insight, I love that. And James, you and I first bonded over our shared love of Jesus, and so before we dive into the core stuff, which I love, I wanna give you an opportunity. I'd love to hear just your personal testimony, if you can give us a synopsis maybe in a 60 seconds or so.
yeah, well, 60 seconds. I think I warned you that normally when I tell my testimony, it's been an hour and 45 minutes. So I will give you the very short version, and that is that, as a teacher in breath work, and I mentioned the East and stuff like that, I was like, at that point, I didn't realize what the definition was, but really a new age, right? I was a new age. So basically, my entire career in life, I've been teaching these principles. Universe was the word I used instead of God. Super not comfortable with the word Jesus. Instead, I used love, right? It's all one thing pointed to one thing. I then I then, had some plant medicine experiences. Very, very few, because I'm very particular about the things I want put in my body and stuff like that. But ultimately, fast forward and trying to keep this to 60 seconds, is I had a psilocybin, which is the mushroom journey, and I had
Okay.
hired a professional person to do this, to guide me through it. We set intentions. We did, and the intentions that I had set were things like, oh, it would be better if I had even more of love and forgiveness for people. Just let me be a
Mhm.
better person, right? Because that's what I'm here to do, is be a better person. And this whole, like, remember, my view of the world as a new ager was, I'm here to, like, we're all just here learning, and then we come back and do it again,
Mhm.
and we just keep learning. The universe is learning. And on this particular morning, for a variety of reasons, Jesus had been in my face, if you will, from a lot of different places. And so I said, oh, you know what, God, the real God, I said, as I'm about to take the 5 grams of psilocybin on this, professional led journey, and just me and the practitioner, that's it. I said, you know what, God, if ever there's a time to tell me that Jesus is the only way, I figure now should be the time. Like, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to, you know, connection with God, which is what the plant medicine is supposed to be, right? No, I won't tell you the details of what happened after that, but it was
I'm so
such
intrigued.
a mind blowing. It didn't just last that day. That day came and went.
Uh-huh.
Um, some very interesting things happened where I almost, let's just say, didn't go through the door or whatever I almost didn't open that thing. I didn't think I was ready for it. But what happened over the next 40 days was the most traumatic
Mm.
craziness of my life. And then the next, let's say about month after that, I was born again. The next month
Mm.
after that, I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was laughing. I was dumbfounded was the word. And this is just a year and a half ago. So this is very new in my life,
Wow.
but the word was dumbfounded. Dumbfounded does not convey the absolute. I never would have imagined that this story of Adam and Eve and Jesus coming to save us and dying for our sins could ever be true. I was like, "Oh, that's a nice story from
Mm.
before, and we've gotten beyond that, now we know
Yeah.
love." But what I learned in that several month period absolutely floored me, put me on my knees, and that's it. I'll end it there by saying that clearly I came back around and I had a completely new vision. It was like taking the glasses off of one and being like, "Holy, I can't even believe that I now understand the truth to be completely different, completely different." So,
Amazing. And
yeah, that's
now
it.
how is that impacting your life today?
Well, you know, the only job I have is to what would Jesus do? WWJD, right? So that's really the simplest guiding factor. And I will tell you that before in my life, people know me as a nice guy and yeah, James does well by people, he has good integrity and stuff like that. I will say though that when I hold myself to like it's one thing to be a nice guy, but set my boundaries and um let's put it this way. Jesus, the day before he was crucified, was washing the feet of his disciples. That's a very, very different. By the way, I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for the first time, really, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, Jesus basically walked around casting demons from people." Like, in any case, the whole that's not to start a whole nother can of worms with it, um, but the whole concept of how I look at the world not only has changed, but also I'm starting to see now that when I really check in and I'm like WWJD, it it really does soften me. It really does say, "Okay, Lord, what's your will? What do you want?" Because it's basically I was at the height of pride but didn't even realize it. C.S. Lewis says that the in Mere Christianity that the he has a chapter called The Great Sin. And when I turn to the book as a Christian, as a person who doesn't even know what a Christian is, like I'm like trying to figure out where do I go in my life, what's going on here, um, and I'm like, oh, it must be murder or something like this, right? That's the great sin. The great sin is actually pride, and I now understand that at a very very different level. And so to humble yourself to serve others, I am certainly I now realize how far I am from there, even though I thought I was pretty good before. You know what I mean? So in a lot of those ways, that's it. Completely new worldview and now an operating modality. The simplest way to say is, well, what would Jesus do? When I respond to someone, I now more often will check in, well, probably almost all the time, actually. I will check in and say, how would Jesus respond to this person? Like when you watch like The Chosen, it's interesting to me. I haven't watched the whole thing. I've seen a few episodes here and there and stuff, but how many times Jesus says just like something bad is happening or something that's like not ideal in the scenario. And he's like, I understand. I understand.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, that gives you a completely different way of going about life.
It sure does. Well, I thank you for sharing your journey, and I love meeting other people who have come to faith in adulthood as I did. I was 33 when I met Jesus, in truth, and, it does bring a whole new perspective to your life, and I'm sure it informs your work as well, with me and the rethink aging prospect. It's all about how can I care for my body and help other people to care for their bodies so that we can do exactly what you said, live out our faith in that way. And I think that it really sets us apart from the longevity. The spirit in the longevity movement oftentimes is pretty selfish of like, how can I live the longest that I can so I can enjoy all of life, which, course, we want to enjoy life, but it's about being good stewards of our bodies so that we can show up and live out our faith. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
your journey.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, the old adage is health is the greatest wealth. And on the rare occasion when I actually do feel sick these days, or when I remember what it was like, and when I'm laying in bed and I have a fever or whatever it is, like there's nothing you can do. There's
Mhm.
nothing you can do. Everything starts there. And so the temple of the Holy Spirit, like you've got to treat it. You've got to keep it right, not only so that you can enjoy life, but so that you can, do God's will on the earth. Do what you're born to do here, so that you can. It's a lot harder to have patience for people when you're not feeling well. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. Well, I know that your area is fitness and I'm on a deep quest to, know all the different pillars of how we can best take care of ourselves and work toward a greater health span and longevity. And I've come to the conclusion that exercise is quite possibly the top one. Tell me what your discovery along that path has been.
Well, this is really exciting because I feel like now I just accidented into the top longevity thing, right? I'm good at teaching people how to exercise, and now exercise is being identified, just as you said, as probably the number one correlative to longevity that we know about in the research today. Not to say that couldn't change, but that's just saying so. It's much more powerful. In fact, it's more provable than nutrition right now, right? Nutrition's all over the place. Some people will swear by carnivore and others vegan, and then everything in between. And so
Sure.
it's very variable. But from an exercise standpoint, wow, this is the one. The correlatives that come out of the research are things like, simple, silly things like grip strength. People who have grip strength live longer. By the way, let's define longevity. Longevity doesn't mean living longer and suffering. Longevity means, I like to say, dying peacefully in my sleep one day. That's it. Now, longevity is really two things: lifespan and health span, right? Health span means I'm not sick. I'm not sickly the whole time. They talk about the four horsemen. These are the four chronic diseases that basically everyone's going to die from in the world today, unless you have an accident or something, outside of that. And those are metabolic diseases like diabetes, which, by the way, this one is the foundation of all the diseases, is what's being shown now. So you have, and this is like insulin and glucose, like whether you're regulating those well. So metabolic diseases like diabetes. And then you have heart disease, cardiovascular diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, and then you have cancers, right? So those are the four. And basically, to redefine longevity is we want to die peacefully in our sleep without suffering 10 years of chemo, or 5 years, or even, quite frankly, 1 year if possible. Now, we don't really know what's in the cards for any of us, but it makes sense to me, of course, to do what we can to try to stave that off. And one of the other correlatives, I mentioned grip strength as a silly one, but really that's just an overall factor that says it's not really about, like, let's put it this way. My suggestion is not to go get a handheld grip thing and start doing that. My suggestion is to get stronger by lifting weights in general, or to do things that cause you. It's a proxy for strength in general, right? The other one is strength is very, very high up there. The one that just beats it out, but they're close, is cardiovascular VO2 max, basically,
Yeah.
which is a measure of how well you utilize oxygen when you're like running. This is more of a cardiovascular factor. So if you wanted to train for this, what you would do is 4 minutes of kind of like all out. I say kind of because I don't want to deter people, but really it's all out. and then it's 4 minutes of like walking or rest, and then 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off. That's the one that's had the most. You do that about 4 times, maybe 5 or 6 times. That's a form of training that really forces your body, your cells, to start creating new peptides, which is epigenetics, of course, right? And so that's it in a nutshell. I don't remember what the exact question was, but I think the question was basically, exercise is the factor for longevity. If there's only one thing you do, as one of the leading experts in the world is Peter Attia, and he had this book called Outlive, which is really setting a standard now for making it simpler or easy. And basically he says, and if all this doesn't make sense, just go exercise. Put the book down and go exercise. That's the thing, and that's it. And so I feel very blessed that, okay, cool. we are in the, like back 20 years ago when I started this, it was not assumed that you should exercise to be healthy. Now people know you're supposed to exercise to be healthy. Now we have to figure out ways to make it simple, easy, doable. Like, for example, don't start with 4 minutes all out. Don't start with that. You start with, some of you just need to start by walking and then resting and then walking and then resting. And then, so wherever you are is your starting point. And then you have the vision. The vision is eventually maybe I'll run fast for 4 minutes, or bike fast for 4 minutes, or whatever it is that's useful for you.
Yeah, well, how would you approach someone who's maybe, say, midlife, maybe feeling a little out of shape and having some aches and pains, or intimidated by exercising? How do you tell people to go about entering a fitness journey?
The way that I've come to do it in my company is to have two sessions initially, which the first one is an assessment where we find out you do, so you come in, you have to say this assessment, by the way, and the two sessions are ideal for people who either want to start a new exercise program, they don't know, where to start, or there are people who are already exercising who want to learn to use the right muscles, right? So to give you that framework. So then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I would do a breathing assessment. Then we do the 6 primal movements. And the primal movements are the things you have to do as a human being every single day, basically, to get around the world. You're going to have to bend. You're going to have to twist. You're going to have to probably squat to sit down, right? You're going to have to do some version of a lunge if you're, kneeling down to pick up a toy from the ground or whatever, or that's on the floor. You're going to have to push or pull open a door, right? So when you put them together, squat, lunge, bend, twist, push, pull, those are 6 primal movements. The 7th one is technically gait pattern. But in our assessment, if basically I have you do a squat, I then can say, where do you feel it? And many people will say, oh, I feel my legs. Well, that makes sense. But where in your legs? Well, typically it's your thighs, like the front of my thighs, the back of my thighs. That's your quads or your hamstrings. That a lot of people don't know, and they're surprised to learn that those are not the primary muscles that should be used in a squat or a lunge or a bend. It's actually supposed to be your glute. And
Our
so
glutes.
yeah, and so I go through that, and then so I basically let you do the assessment. Our team lets you do the assessment, and then at the end we say, okay, here are the things that, and it's usually pretty simple. You have one list of muscles that are overactive, and one list of muscles that are underactive, and if you know that list of muscles, it's pretty easy. Almost everyone needs to start using glutes. And by the way, some of this stuff, a lot of it is common for humanity because we all sit in chairs, we all kind of drive and we have our right foot on the pedal or whatever. But some of them are then unique for you. Like maybe you cross your left leg over your right while someone else crosses the right leg over the left. Maybe someone carries the groceries on the left and someone else carries them on the right. So there are ones that are unique to you. There's ones that are sort of common for humanity. But in general, we find that people are not using core breathing. They're not using their glutes. They're overusing their quads and hamstrings. They're overusing their lower back, and so that's why they have back pain. They're overusing their neck muscles. That's why they have neck pain. And so the first session is about learning what the right muscles are. That's the most important thing. And knowledge, I really do believe, is power. It's better to go to the gym for the first time knowing which muscles you're supposed to use as opposed to just using the ones that are already predisposed, the ones that have sort of been already 30 years worth of poor posture and bad muscle activation. You know what I mean? We don't want to strengthen poor muscle activation, but you
Right.
can. People do it all the
Yeah.
time. We want to first restructure and then strengthen that. And so then the second session is you come back and we say, okay, now you've been practicing the number one thing that we thought you should do, which by the way is usually core breathing. Oftentimes glutes
Mhm.
is up there too. Sometimes it's shoulder blades, depending if you have a elbow, shoulder, whatever issue is that happens to be your goal and your unique need, right? So we give you your one thing to work on. And then on the second session, we now have a little bit more like that touches upon each one. And then if that's it, if that's all you can do, then great. You've at least had something that quite frankly should be taught in schools at this point, but it's not. Maybe one day it will be. But it's like, these are the muscles you're supposed to be getting. Now you can go to YouTube for free and try to apply now what you've learned to the YouTube classes. Or you can go to Orange Theory or to the Y or whatever it is that's your gym. And now you can go, and now at least someone's told you the right muscles. And then quite frankly, I'm a believer that just about everyone needs 3 months of of corrective exercise, real programming it 3 times a week. It's an investment for the rest of your life. It will serve you the rest of your life. But I realize not everyone can do that. Obviously we try to work with people's budgets, and we want to make this as accessible as possible. But unfortunately, very few people know how to use the right muscles when they're just getting started. You literally have to be taught this. And I'm talking even our kids today, unfortunately. I train 14-year-olds, and I've assessed my kids when they were 7, and I'm already finding that, you sit them in chairs for long periods of time. You do that sort of modern capitalist thing with them, and it kind of falls down, because you have to realize that just chairs. You might notice I don't have chairs in my house. Actually, I'm a weirdo, but chairs are a new invention
Mm,
from a humanity point of view. Like, we didn't have chairs for a long time. They were originally thrones, and then the common people wanted to look more like the wealthy people, so they made their own chairs. That's essentially the history
fascinating.
of chairs, right? So
I love
chairs,
that.
it's actually, how important it is for people to squat all the way down with their heels on the ground. Like, a lot of us
Mhm.
have heard that. Well, we've lost that. Why? Primarily
Yeah,
because of chairs. Everything you
right.
do, the toilet even, what do we do when people get older and they can't sit on the toilet? We raise the toilet up with a seat extender now, right? So we don't teach them to squat down. We don't teach them to use the right muscles and to do better function and good range of motion. We instead keep making it easier to permit their imbalance, easier to permit unfortunately, their decline over
Yeah.
time.
I love that you start with the idea of making sure that the body is, functioning well and moving well, as opposed to, where I typically tend to start with people, like, "Let's start a walking program or a, strength training program," but it is so you're correct. We need to start from the basics of making sure that you're breathing properly, that your, posture is good, that your muscles are firing well so that you're setting yourself up for success and that you can train better and longer and harder, and avoid injuries. And so I love
Ye
that you're
and
starting from that
re
place.
The research is actually now saying that more and more and more. I look at a lot of research studies. As a nature, as the education director at Fit for Birth for a while, I did that for many years. I also am hired as a longevity researcher for a particular kind of like VIP client or something like that. So I'm actively looking at research. I sometimes am buying the articles and looking at how they actually did the research, and stuff like that. And what we're finding is that they are increasingly saying right there in the abstract, even, like, an individualized program seems to be the important way. And that's very true, because while I can say for everyone listening right now, you're going to have to get your core breathing. You're going to have to get your glutes on, and you're going to have to get your shoulder blades to work. Those are 3 things that everyone listening to this is going to have to get schooled on. Go to YouTube and go try to figure it out. Like that. You have to. But there are some things that are unique to you that are going to take a flexibility assessment, which isn't even what I do in the first assessment, quite frankly. But if I work with you for 3 months, the next month we do the flexibility assessment. Then the following month we'll actually do a pelvic floor assessment. Um, Another inner core assessment, essentially. But the flexibility assessment, we might find that while one person you're supposed to, like, have hip rotation that can go, both ways like this. And some people are, they're supposed to get 45 degrees each direction. And some people are at 5 degrees one way and 45 the other. And other people are at 5 degrees the other way and 45 degrees the other. And I don't know which one to give you until I have checked that one. And unfortunately, that's what affects you can make a lot of progress strengthening the right muscles. Eventually, you also want to know which ones are the right ones to stretch, because a lot of times people are stretching the muscles. In fact, often they're stretching muscles that they shouldn't be stretching. Actually, it's
Yeah.
actually worsening their pain. But because there's a numbing effect initially, it feels like it's better for them. And in the short term, it feels like, oh, that feels better, but it's actually driving more. And I have examples of that throughout my career with that. It's so much to the point of individualized that in Atia's book, he calls it stability training. That's the thing that I want to give you in 2 sessions. I want to give you a 10-minute daily stability program, not one that's going to make you sore, or it's really not about building muscle, although it certainly lays the framework and the groundwork for building muscle. But it's really imagine doing 10 minutes every day, or 5 if that's where you have to start. Like, I try to make it very doable for people every day. ideally first thing in the morning so it doesn't, get out of hand or whatever, but really wherever you want, 5 or 10 minutes every day of the, let's say, 2, 3, 4, or 5 most important things for you. And probably one's going to be glutes, probably one's going to be a core breathing, probably one's going to be shoulder blades. And then maybe after that, you have your particular stretch that you need, the one that's right for you, not just the one that you're doing because you think it's a good one. And then maybe one more or something and that's it. That's what we want to give you. And so it also goes back to your question of how do we get someone started who doesn't know where to start and how do we make it doable? That's how you make it doable. You set that, and then you set that as as something for you to do every day. And then you come back to me when you've done that. Well, every day when you have built that habit of this is what I do. It's like, by the way, it's no harder than brushing your teeth. At one point, you did not brush your teeth every day, and then someone instilled in you the importance of brushing your teeth. And now you don't go to bed without brushing your teeth. That's the fact of our culture today, right? For most people, right? So we have to, and we will at some point, because it's going to be mandatory when enough of us are in pain and stuff, but we will at some point get to the place where you have to move your body every day.
Want to get into the core breathing aspect because that really was a light bulb moment for me. I thought I knew all about core breathing and you taught me a lot. So talk about the muscles involved and um I guess my epiphany was that we actually breathe from way down into even our lower abdomen is involved with this type of breathing. And I would love to have you just, give our listeners your spiel about it, and maybe even do a demonstration of how to do some core breathing exercises.
Perfect. I'll put my camera, for those of you who are watching, I'll put my camera and sort of show you, but I'll also guide you with my words. So your diaphragm is a muscle that sits below the lungs, and it separates the top half of your torso from the bottom. So your lungs are on top, and then your organs like your stomach and your intestines are below. When you inhale, the diaphragm essentially pushes down into the organs below. And that's why belly breathing is something that most of us have probably heard of at this point. So when you inhale, your torso all the way around, your ribs out to the side, your lower back out to the back, and a little bit of your belly should all expand and get larger. So if you do it with me right now, you just take a nice slow inhale. I would suggest doing it through your nose, by the way, because that's our main breathing organ, as opposed to mouth, which is supposed to be for emergency purposes otherwise, which is okay. We want to use it when we have to, but like when you're in extreme exercise, we would open the mouth, or if you're sick, right? So you inhale and you fill your torso for 1, 2, 3, or however long you want. This is just practicing getting it into your diaphragmatic breathing. And then when you exhale, your tummy should get smaller. Now, go ahead and do that again, where you inhale and you allow your tummy and your torso to get a little larger. Then you exhale and you make your tummy smaller. Some of you will notice that that's not natural. Some of you will notice that you actually want to do the opposite. It's called inverse breathing, and it's considered to be technically dangerous because it's hardwired to hormones of stress, basically. So breathing can lower stress if you do it right. And being in a low stress state will naturally also mean you're probably diaphragmatic breathing. So just that they go both ways. So you inhale into your torso again, and then you exhale and make your tummy get smaller. Now, what is core breathing? Well, core breathing is really what I would say when we want to use your breathing to produce force, right? So let's imagine I'm going to push a door open here. I'd like to, and you don't obviously have to do this every single time, but it would be nice. Or let's say we're lifting weights. You inhale into your torso, and then when you pick something up off the floor, when you push the door open, when you lift the weight, you kind of make that exhale that makes the tummy get smaller. That activates your abs. And so to make it really clear, we want to use diaphragmatic breathing is one concept. You should be doing that basically 20,000 times a day, all day long, every day. That's where you should be, unless there's some stressful exercise or whatever reason why you're not diaphragmatic breathing. So that's item 1. Item 2 is, can you use your diaphragmatic breathing to generate force and core strength so that you are stable in your spine when you push a weight or when you do anything, when you pick up groceries? Most people have this process working backwards, where they pick something up and their brain says, oh, I'm engaging my hands and my arms, and then their core does not fire, which means that their lower back has to engage, and then you have lower back pain over time and things like this. And so does that teach what you wanted to be
It
taught?
does.
Okay.
To move like a human. I remember when you said that was part of our goals, I'm like, "Yes, I wanna move like a human."
Did I say move
To
like a
be able
human?
Yes. To be able to use core and breath to move through life in a way that, is powerful and protects our spine and helps us to have greater freedom of movement and longevity,
Yeah.
really.
And where, by the way, a lot of people are coming in, I think you were too, is you had an understanding. A lot of people, I'll just speak for a lot of clients, they have understandings of diaphragmatic breathing, but they're especially increasingly today. Remember, I've worked with a lot of fitness professionals around the world too directly, and most of them fail the breathing test. So if most fitness professionals are failing the breathing test, like everybody's pretty much failing the breathing test. Now, some people, deep sea divers, every once in a while, a singer, and some savvy yoga instructors are sometimes showing me for the assessment. Like it's like they know how to perform, so they'll show me good diaphragmatic breathing. But then when they move, when they do their squats, lunges, push-ups, whatever, they completely disconnect from their breathing and just do them the normal way, like without their core. And so that is something that has to be learned. Number one, you have to learn diaphragmatic breathing. Then once you've done that, then number two is you have to learn how to implement it like in harmony and synchrony with your movements.
That may feel heavy or overwhelming to people of, "Goodness, I've gotta learn how to breathe." But I would say that the effort is worth it because once you start doing it and practicing it, I'm finding that I notice it's automatic now. A lot of times I'll notice, different movements if I'm in the car and, turning the steering wheel, I'll notice that I'm, engaging, the core
Hmm.
muscles and breathing in the way that you've been teaching me. So it the effort you put in at the beginning to build the foundation will really pay off over time.
Yeah, I mean, to reinforce that a little bit, there's an old saying in the kinesiology realm that it takes 3 to 5,000 repetitions to relearn a previously poorly learned pattern. So what that now, if you breathe 20,000 times a day, technically that means that you could do it in an afternoon. Now, are most of us going to stay so focused and essentially meditative on just focusing there without our brain? No. And so in reality, it takes more time. But yes, I wish I could make it easier for people, but unfortunately, our world today doesn't make it easy to eat healthy. It doesn't make it easy to be fit. It doesn't make it health you have to show up for. I was coaching with a client the other day, and I'm like, well, look, let's think of what your priorities are. We've got your family, you've got your spouse, you've got your work, you've got your health needs to be up there, and maybe there's a couple others. There's your hobby, the thing you love. If you say let's just say there's five main things, and I'm sure we can come up with more, but but shouldn't then one portion of your day be dedicated to health on some level? I think the answer is yes, but a lot of people, we unfortunately, we live in capitalist society, right? So we spend most of our day doing work-related things, and a lot of us have to, of course. Most of us have to. And so it's unfortunately that's the case where we can't give it the time that we probably should. But unfortunately, it's just like anything, finances too. If you don't start saving money, it's gonna suck later on. So it's just I wish life was not that way. I wish it
Mhm.
was easier, and I wish I had more secrets to it, but you got to start somewhere. And I try to make it easy. Like right now, if the only thing that any listener does from this is go away and start to breathe diaphragmatically based just simply on what we literally talked about a couple minutes ago. Inhale, fill the tummy, and then exhale, make it small. That make your tummy smaller. That will go so far for your health because it's such an incredible necessity. It's not only going to turn on, remember I said it's going to turn on your physical, like your core, right? It's laying the foundation for your physical health, your alignment, your muscle balance. That is the number one thing you can do because it affects everything up and down the chain because of what I said before, how if your breathing is off, your body literally has to start overworking other muscles and just screws your whole body up and down the chain. You've got to get that down for your physical health. And then secondly, it's your hormonal health. It's your mental, emotional health. Don't we all know, like, oh, slow down, take a deep breath? There are literal physiological science-proven reasons why we have to breathe that way. And so if that's the only thing you do, and then you know how it usually goes for people, you forget for hours, and then it's like, oh, I remember that guy told me I should be doing that. So then you do it again, and that's it. And over the course of the next few months, because you're dedicated to it, because maybe you write a Post-it note to yourself, maybe you put a note in your calendar that does remind you once a day, oh, stop and breathe. People do those things, they do work, and you have to put in the work. I wish it wasn't that way, but it does have to be
Like
the work.
putting little deposits in your longevity bank account
Yeah.
all throughout the day, and we can do it just simply with our breath. And James, something I read somewhere, maybe on your website, or maybe you shared with me, about wanting to be able to throw your grandchildren up in the air and catch them. I love that, and I want to just land here for a little bit of tying these health behaviors, all the checklist of things that we need to do to keep ourselves healthy. It can feel heavy and overwhelming, but I think when we shift how we think about it and we tie those things to the beautiful things we want to accomplish in our life of, being there healthy and well for our family. I want to be the best nana ever eventually and be able to roll around on the ground with my grandkids and play. And you want to be able to throw your grandkids up in the air. I think tying our everyday health behaviors to those beautiful, important outcomes in our life is the key to being able to keep up that motivation and persistence in doing that. So just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize, years ago that I would end up coming so heavily into the longevity space, but it's so natural based on where I came from all the way, right? So, when I first, in fact, it's just kind of how my life works. When I was found out that we're with my wife and we were going to have our first kid, I immediately started trying to figure out. At that point, it was 2008, and I said, "Oh, look at all this holistic stuff I know. Let me find out how to make a really healthy child." And I started doing lots of that was why Fit for Birth, came into my sphere, right? And then and back then, even back then, I knew that I wanted to be a very active dad. I saw so many tired parents, so many people just like, oh, like I saw how they treated their kids, like just go play. I'll be over here because I'm literally tired. I need rest. And I was like, I'm never going to be that kind of parent. And now that kid is 17, for example. My kids are in their teens, and now I'm doing the exact same thing. That's my why, and my why is because I'm going to throw my grandkids up in the air at the beach, just like I did my kids. And maybe it won't be as high. That's fine, but that's my why because and I want to be able to obviously not be in a wheelchair, right? That's another why. There's a few whys that are important to me. There are many whys that people have. One client I work with right now came to me, and she she was afraid to clean her bathroom because she didn't think she could get back up off the ground. It was actually true. She could not get back off the ground without needing help. And now she's been strength training for a few months, and now she gets up off of the now you know why she has bathroom cleaners is because she doesn't want to clean the bathroom. But now she gets up and down off the floor all the time because it's part of what she practices every day, and she feels so much better. Her why is because she doesn't want to be pushed around by her grandkids, and she wants to actually be able to go to the with the grandkids when the grandkids go to like the water parks and stuff like that. She wants to actually be able to go and be able to participate. So yes, to your point, it's very, very useful. This is part of an initial couple sessions too that I would do with someone is definitely you have to identify your why. Why, what's your life dream? What's your goal? What are you really
Yeah.
working for right now? A lot of people say, I just want to stay active and freedom. Well, that's
Mhm.
the name of my
It's a good
company is Fit
value.
for Freedom for that reason. That's the whole concept behind it is so that you can remain free, so that you can keep doing things. Without health, you don't have a lot. It sucks. So I
Oh,
like to help people get there, and identifying the why is definitely an important piece. So
I love that. Well, James, this has been so delightful. I love your energy and your passion. We could
thanks.
just bottle it. If you could give our listeners one longevity pearl to hold on to, what would it be?
Good one. Well, we started already with doing breathing, and so I'll double down
Mhm.
on that and say that one, but I will give you one more. One of the ways that I started figuring out, like, what we should do from a human health point of view is by looking at our ancestors and seeing what they did. And
Mm.
our ancestors died for, because of various reasons, but mostly it was because of disease, and that's how it's thought to be, disease and then puncture wounds, things we can solve now pretty easily.
Infectious disease
Infectious
and
disease, that's
injury.
right.
Mhm.
But they didn't have the chronic diseases. We have the chronic diseases today. And so there's a certain genetic code that all of us come here with that are necessities. And so this is what at our company, what we talk about are the 5 foundations. One of them is breathing. So we've chatted about that. The second one is exercise. If you look back and you look at, well, what did our ancestors do? Did we sit at computers and at desks all day? Of course not. We were not sedentary. So it informs us as to how we should do our movement, right? And then the next one is nutrition. Well, did our ancestors eat unprocessed foods or processed foods, right? So let that inform us. Did they drink water or did they drink other things, right? So let that inform what probably is going to be best for our health habits, right? Then you get to sleep and other lifestyle things. No, none of us need more toxins in our life, so let's try to remove them from our household, bathroom products where possible. Sleep. This is huge. Are we going outside in the day and getting sun? Sunlight through the window is not the same UV as sunlight outside. And so while you don't need to go lay down for long periods of time and do sunbathing, that's more of a modern thing. What we do have to have sun and we have to have our feet on the ground. We have to have light during the day. And then quite frankly, when the sun goes down, we should not be turning on our lights at night, and because it messes up our hormones. We have to honor our natural biological rhythms. And then the fifth one is just mindset. This could be a whole other, talk, but the
One of my favorite
importance,
topics.
yeah, the importance of, well, just trying to see the world through a better lens, through an optimistic lens, and also de-stressing. I'll just count those in,
Mhm.
into there. That's really important. And ultimately, I think what the research is going to show once we start being able to research things like this is it will probably show that mindset and that sort of energy realm is at least as important, if not far more important than exercise. In the meantime,
Mhm.
what we've got is exercise. If there's only one thing you do, get out there and exercise. And the first exercise that you do is breathing.
Love it. Thank you, James. Thank you so much. I would love for you to share with our listeners how they can learn more about you and your longevity coaching services that you offered, so they can get a good stable core and get the breathing down so that they can set themselves up for success with fitness training.
Great. Yeah, thank you. The website, as you said at the beginning, the same one is www.exerciseforlongevity.life. It's not a .com, it's .life. So exerciseforlongevity.life. And you can reach us there and send an email or put your, question into the contact form. I'm happy to get back to you and really answer whatever questions you have. Obviously, there you can sign up for 2 sessions or for an entire month of training. And I like to have an introductory sort of call with people to find out what's important for you and to see if this matches. If this is sometimes people really need to get a food delivery, like their budget should be for food delivery, right? So I don't want to take everyone down one set mindset path. I want to make sure that you're doing the best thing for your overall, health and wellness, and try to make your dollar last for as long as possible.
Thank you so much, James. It was
Thank you.
pleasure, and we'll have to have you back sometime and delve deeper into some of the other topics we didn't get a chance to talk about today.
I would love it.
Okay, bye for now.
Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode of Rethink Aging, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone you love. For more episodes and highlights from the show, you can check out more videos right here and here. I also invite you to join the Rethink Aging community at caringforthebody.org, where you can find more resources on how to better protect your brain, strengthen your body, and live with purpose. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.